Open your book to page 437. Today's lesson is on composite function and inverse function. So composite function, it can be written in different ways. So on page 437, one of the way is you have f, o, so little circle, you say o. So f, o, g, or f of g, okay, of x. So this is a composite function. Now this is not a multiplication. Okay, this is f of g of x. Okay, but this is kind of harder to relate. So normally it's easier if you write it this way. Okay, so this is called a composite function. Composite function means you have a function inside a function, or one function after the other. Okay, so this is f of g of x. Now the way to understand function is think of as, actually you deal with function all the time, the composite function all the time. You can use the illustration of doing your laundry. Okay, so here's your laundry. Okay, x is your item. Okay, that's your input. So first machine you're going to use is the g function. In this case, would be your wash machine. Okay, so you put your laundry inside the wash machine. When it's done, you take it out, then you're going to put in the next function, the f function, which is the dryer. Okay, so that would be example of composite function. Now you have to be careful with composite function. If you switch the order, most of the time, okay, unless they are kind of inverse of each other, if they're not inverse of each other, when you switch the order, the result will come out different. Again, think about doing the laundry, right? Normally you put in the wash machine, when it's done, you take it out, and you put in the dryer, right? But if you switch the order, the result is going to be different, right? Okay. So again, same thing. So do not switch the order unless they're inverse of each other. Then in that case, then the result will come out the same. Okay. Okay. So let's go over how to use the inverse, the composite function. So let's go to example 1. And that's A. Now, when you have composite function, you want to use 3 columns or 4 columns, depends on how many functions. So you're looking for f of g of 4. So since you're going to use the f function and g function, so you need to go and write your f function and g function on the side. So you have f of x is equal to 6x plus 1. And g of function, g of x, is equal to square root of x. Now, when you're doing the composite function, you have to start inside and you work your way out. So first, you have to deal with the g of 4. So if you're looking for g of 4, it means when you put the 4 in the g function, what will you get out? Okay. So what you need to do, since you're using the g function, you have to go over here. So you're looking for g of 4. So you line it up. So g of 4. Now g of 4 means whenever you see the x, you replace with it with a 4. That's what it's saying, right? So g of x, and when you're looking for g of 4, it becomes square root of 4. Again, whenever you see x, change into a 4. Whenever you see x, you change into a 4. So g of 4 is equal to 2. So now you know what g of 4 is. Again, think about doing the laundry, right? So you put the dirty laundry in the wash machine. What you're going to get out? Well, you come over here and you try it, right? So you're going to find out that, okay, when you put a dirty laundry in the wash machine, you're going to come out with a clean, wet laundry, right? So that's what this is, okay? So now you know what the result is. So now what you have is the output from the wash machine. So now what you're going to do with the wet, clean laundry? Well, you're going to put in a dryer this time, right? So now to put in a dryer, you come to the dryer, right? You have to bring the laundry to the dryer, right? This is a washing machine. This is a dryer, right? So that's going to put this in the. So that's going to put the wet, clean clothes in a dryer, and let's see what happens. Okay, so now you put this in the dryer. Now the dryer is going to do things to it, right? Okay, so you got f of 2 is going to be equal to 13, and so that's what's going to come out. So this will equal to 13, and that's your answer. Okay. So you can think of this as your dirty laundry. First, you put in the washing machine. So you go to the washing machine, you put it inside the washing machine, and it's going to do all these things, and it's going to come out. You're going to end up with clean, wet clothes. So now you have wet, clean clothes. What are you going to do? Well, you're going to put in the dryer, right? Okay, so you walk to the dryer, you put in the dryer, and the dryer is going to do all these things, and it's going to come out with, nice, clean clothes, and that's what you're going to end up with. Okay, so again, that's what composite function is. You put in one machine. When you're done, whatever outcome you put in the next machine. Okay. Now let's go and do the part B. Now the part B is you're looking for g of f of 4. Okay. So again, it's same process, right? Now let's see what happens. See if it come out the same. Okay. So again, first you're going to put in the dryer first. Okay. So you have to go to the dryer, right? So we're going to do crazy things. So again, the dryer is going to do all this. You're going to do something to it, right? So f of 4 is going to end up with 25. Okay. So if you put in the dryer first, you're going to get really hot, dirty clothes. Now you're going to put in the washing machine. Okay. So you can remember these are opposite, right? Okay. So you're looking for g of 25 now. So g of 25, you come over here. You're going to put in the washing machine now, right? So g of 25 will equal to 5, and so equal to 5. So you can see that when you switch the order, the answer come up quite different, right? And again, just think about doing your laundry, right? So you can apply the math in your real life, right? When you deal with functions, you got to have the correct order, right? Because if you do your laundry put in the wrong order, your parents probably not going to be very happy, right? Say something wrong with you. You can say, well, I'm just trying different function. I'm try different order of composite function. I'm testing out the math theory. Okay, anyway, so some little fun. Okay, so that's composite function. Now let's go to page 439. We're going to do the inverse function. Now inverse function means you're switching the x and the y. That's what inverse is. So if you look over here, right? So you have one function over here. You have f of x equal to x plus 4 over 2. So that's a red line. Now if you switch x and the y, it becomes inverse function, and you end up with g of x equal to 2x minus 4, and you get a blue line. The relationship between the inverse function is this. There are reflection over x equal to y. Okay, so here, notice here's your line, right? The x and the y. So it reflects over that. Again, from your geometry, okay, you learn about reflection, right? The reflection is they are perpendicular to the line of reflection. So black line is think of like a mirror. Okay, the black line is like your mirror. So you put a mirror over here, and you're going to see the image. Okay, so the red line over here, when you reflect over, you get that. This you reflect over, you get that. Okay, again, inverse function means you're switching x and the y. So if you look at the points, like this point over here, if you look at this point over here, the coordinate is 1, negative 2, right? So when you reflect over, you're switching x and the y. So this point becomes negative 2, 1, and that's over here, see that? So you're switching the x and the y coordinate, and that's how you end up with that. So again, if you're looking at the coordinate, you switch the x and the y coordinate, right? 1, negative 2 become negative 2, 1. This one over here, you got 1/2, negative 3. When you doing the inverse function, you switch x and the y, so it becomes negative 3, 1/2. Okay? And if you notice, there's a point, this over here, this point is a spatial point over here, is 4, 4. So it's 4, 4. When you switch, you still get what? 4, 4, right? Okay. So that's kind of the when you look at a graph, that's what the inverse function is. Again, if you look on this function over here, so over here you got y equal to x squared. When you do the inverse function, okay, you end up with this. Okay, we're gonna go over how to get the inverse function algebraically. But for now, the graph, notice 2, 4. When you switch x and the y, 2, 4 becomes 4, 2. See that? So you flip over, right? This over here, negative 2, 4 becomes 4, negative 2. Right? Again, so and you do that for every point. And this point is 0, 0, so you switch x and the y, you still get 0, 0. Okay? So that's what happened with the graph. You switch x and the y coordinate, and that's how you get the inverse function graph. But to do it algebraically, this is what you need to do. Okay, so let's go over how to find the inverse function algebraically. So on page 439, example 3, you have f of x equal to x cubed minus 1. So you're looking for inverse function. Now this is not a -1 exponent. Okay, this is deal with function. So this is the inverse function of f. So you're looking for that. So to do that, first, it's kind of harder to use f of x. So I'm going to use y, right? F of x is y, right? So let's go and use y instead, so easier to understand. Now remember what I said about inverse function, right? Inverse function is when you switch x and the y. Okay, so when you switch x and the y, so this becomes x equal to y to the 3 minus 1. Again, inverse function is switching x and the y. Okay, x becomes y, y becomes x. So that's what inverse function is. So now you're ready to, now you have to solve for y, right? So you solve for y, so you plus 1, plus 1. So you're going to get x plus 1 equal to y to the 3. Okay, I'm going to move the y to this side. Then I'm going to take the cube root. So y equal to cube root of x plus 1. And because this is the new y, right? This is the new y. So this is your inverse function. So that's your inverse function of x, right? So that's how you find the inverse function. So again, inverse function means you switch the x and the y. So x becomes y, y becomes x. So the red color is your new function, which is inverse function. And again, to get a function, remember function is y, right? So you have to solve for y. So you're just going to do your algebra to solve for y. And that new y is your new function, which is the inverse function. Okay, and so that's how you find the inverse function. So just switch x and y. Okay. Okay, so let's go and do some practice.